Breaking news right now on 10 News at 11, protests in the Hill City. You're looking at video. We have live team coverage coming up for you for the second night of demonstrations in Lynchburg after a violent riot last night. Plus,
we could not be silent because silence itself speaks.
A moment of peace in the middle of all this unrest. The message from hundreds during a moment of prayer there in the Hill City. And
where there is no law, there is no opportunity. Where there is no justice, there is no liberty.
President Donald Trump promises to bring troops into areas where riots continue, why he says governors are not doing enough to keep people protected. Well, good evening, everyone. Another night of unrest across America tonight. So far, 23 states have called in the National Guard, including right here in Virginia. But right away, we want to give you a live look at protests in Lynchburg. We do have a scene right now for you. This is dozens of police officers in riot gear. They have been in a standoff with protesters for several hours now, even though the city is under an 8 p.m. curfew. Now, we do have live team coverage of the protests. We'll have those for you in just a moment. First, let's take a look around the rest of the nation tonight. Take a look at New York City, also under a curfew this evening. Thousands out last night in the streets there as well. In Washington, D.C., protesters getting close to the White House. This is video from earlier tonight. Federal agents had been brought in to protect federal buildings there. Now, as I mentioned, we do have team coverage for you tonight from what we're calling forceful demonstrations in Lynchburg tonight. We don't want to say the word riot, but it is more than a peaceful demonstration, that's for sure. Our Jessica Jewell and Magdala Lusant are near Miller Park tonight, and that's where people have been gathered all night. Now, guys, I know that you were being harassed a little bit by the protesters. Are you there? Are you able to talk to us and tell us what's going on right now?
John, we are here. We have gone behind the Salvation Army here to kind of get away from the protesters because, as you mentioned, we were being harassed a little bit and we didn't want to risk profanity and things that we were hearing being broadcast over air. It has been a very chaotic evening, especially in the last hour. Just a few minutes ago, we were walking towards this police line you see up here.
The police line is advancing right now. As Jessica was already saying, we got away from this crowd. Police line are advancing. They're coming even closer. People are not listening to the police's commands to go home. This protest did start off peaceful. We were here at 6 o'clock this evening with about 60 to 70 people who were here. You're hearing more of that tear gas. You hear that boom? That's tear gas still popping because people are not listening to the police who are telling them to go home. Remember, there is there is a curfew right now, and it's well past that. It was at 8 o'clock. It's 11:03 right now. Police are still throwing this tear gas, telling people to go home. Again, as I've already said, the protests started peaceful today at 6 o'clock. The crowd changed a little bit because Jessica was here, and she was in the crowd. You want to talk about that, Jessica?
Yeah, we were here right after that peaceful protest, and it started getting a little more chaotic. They were chanting and they were blocking off traffic in the streets. That's when police started shutting down the streets, and that's when things got more chaotic. The group marched up the street, and that's when the first round of tear gas was deployed. We do want to mention the images you're seeing right now. Our photographer is keeping a safe distance, but trying to give you a good idea of what's going on right now. And as we said, John, it's just a little chaotic right now.
Yeah, no, it looks chaotic, and we've been watching and streaming all of this live on our Facebook page, the WSLS 10 Facebook page all night, and monitoring multiple cameras, including at least one from a citizen who was in the march. So right now, approximately where are you? You're in the vicinity of E.C. Glass High School, are you not?
We're not, John. This is okay. Magdala right now.
Hi,
we're
Magdala.
not close to E.C. Glass High School. We are hiding behind the Salvation Army building. Now, the protest was at Miller Park. It was across the street from the Salvation Army. But because of the crowd and the tear gas that's being thrown out now to warn these people to go home, we are running for cover as well as they're running towards us. And because there is a lot of profanity going on, we're keeping ourselves away from them as well so we don't catch that on air. We do want to talk about our experience with the tear gas. is because, you know, as Jessica was talking about being in the crowd, as the crowd went to progress up the street towards police, we were there to see the line start forming, and police were starting to form the line, and there were protesters who were going to walk around the police officers. It was just a few people who began to agitate the police. And what happened was, once they started doing that, police were calling or giving their warnings to tell people to back away. People were throwing water bottles, even fireworks, at the police officers. And there were people there who were telling them, don't do that, don't do that. This is supposed to be a peaceful protest. This is supposed to be a peaceful protest. But there weren't people who were listening. And so that's when the tear gases came. And when they did come, we will say we got caught up in the middle of that. It was scary for both myself and our photographer, Jeff Perzan. I know Jessica caught a little bit wind of it at the beginning, and we were talking to each other on the phone, but at 1 minute we could, the feeling of the tear gas for us, you hear more of that popping sound. That's more tear gas they're deploying out there. But
and Magdala, we do want to mention, too, there's live tear gas that's being fired right now.
Right.
They're trying to disperse these crowds. They've had multiple warnings telling people to go home. And so they're doing these other strategies, employing these other tactics to try to get people to get out of this area.
So Jessica or Magdala, whoever can see better.
They just fired tear gas again. You can see that.
Right. Now, we're seeing that on the air.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, we're seeing that on the air, and we're seeing police at one end of the street, and then we're seeing the protesters. Are you able to tell if the crowd is in fact dispersing, or are they just backing off?
Yes.
Yes,
the crowd is dispersing for the most part. It
Yep.
has significantly decreased. People are coming into these parking lots where we are right now.
Yes.
But it seems like a lot of people are finally getting the message and trying to get out of this area.
Right, and it's quiet now. A lot of those people, it's not as loud as it was earlier. If you could even hear people in our background, it's a lot more quiet. It might be a few people still lingering right now, but everyone is getting the message to go home.
Did the protesters, did they seem to have an agenda tonight in terms of trying to get to somewhere, maybe the restaurant or the auto dealership that was vandalized last night, or was it just a sense of unrest and unruliness?
So we do want to mention that there were a lot of police officers in this area, 60 to 70 state police officers, other agencies. They were blocking off all of that access to downtown, so no one was getting in that area. They closed that all down to traffic. So they had to take some different routes in this area that we kind of mentioned earlier. And it's kind of some of the same messages that we have heard before, some of the message we've heard escalating, echoing around the country.
Right. And that was the message for today, for most people anyway, was to talk about what's going on in Minneapolis. But unfortunately, that message got lost by a few people who did not want to listen. Even at the towards the top of the street here, where you're looking, where the officers might be walking back towards that way, when people got up there and they wanted to keep walking and keep protesting, it was a few people who were throwing water bottles at the police line. And then there were others who were telling them, don't do that. We're not here for that. Why are you throwing water bottles? Then you started to see the fireworks, and then the tear gases came. People dispersed. It was not a good experience. And unfortunately, something that was supposed to be peaceful turned out this way, and it wasn't supposed to be. I mean, I was here at 6 o'clock, and speaking to the people who were here, they said their plan was to be peaceful. A lot of them didn't agree with what happened to 5th and Federal yesterday. That was not their plan, but at the end of the day, it was to get the message across with what everyone else in this country wants to do, and that's because of what happened in Minneapolis too. And their message was to not forget the name of George Floyd, and also to raise awareness to what happened, or to the tweet that 5th and Federal did, but at the same time, don't forget what's going on in Minneapolis, and not to forget George Floyd's name. So that was the message, and unfortunately, a few people acted out of character, and it lost. The message was lost tonight here in Lynchburg
but we
because
do
of that.
want to mention that the police are retreating now, so people are getting that message. You mentioned those dispersing crowds, so people are going home, and that is good news.
And they're going home because of the tear gas. Is that? I mean, that's what it appears on the screen right now. Is that your sense also?
Okay.
Yeah, that appears to be. The police started with over the loudspeaker telling the crowds that they needed to go home. Lynchburg police ordering them to disperse, unlawful assembly, then bringing that line forward of police officers and then firing off that tear gas. And that's what seemed to really be the most effective.
Yes, yes. As Jessica's already said, a lot of it was that warning too. You could hear once the SWAT cars came out, when the lines or when the crowd started walking up, you see from the left or right side of the street, the Bearcat came out directing the crowd to stay away from the police line, and they did that. And they listened to the commands, at least some people did anyway.
Yeah, the Bearcat is that big state
right,
police
is the
vehicle,
big state police who
the armored vehicle.
Exactly. And when I did speak with some members of Lynchburg Police's tactical team today, they told me they called Virginia State Police for help, to help them out tonight. They didn't know what they were going to expect, honestly. When I told them, I said, to have all these officers here, do you have a feeling that people will make their way back down to 5th and Federal and see another round of this happening again? And they said they're not sure. They were not sure what to expect tonight, and they
wanted to be ready, but there was a sense
left
last night
everyone
that,
shocked.
I think there was a sense last night that the police did not anticipate the large number of people who would be turning out, and so tonight they wanted to be doubly prepared. Is that fair?
Right.
Yeah, it seems that they were much better prepared tonight.
Exactly.
The numbers of law enforcement officers were much higher tonight. They had more riot gear. It seems like they had a much better idea of what to expect, or at least what to be prepared for based off of last night.
Now,
the plan was very meticulous. Well,
I was going to say,
sorry,
Magdala,
go ahead, John.
I know that Jeff Brzan, our photographer, got a pretty healthy dose of tear gas when he was getting some of these images that our viewers are seeing. Was that true for all four of you, or did Jeff get the worst of it? And what was that like to experience that?
So we all got tear gas essentially. At one point, Magdala and Jeff Brzan were up further towards the police and where they were firing the tear gas, and I saw Jeff Brzan drop to his knees, and he found a water bottle.
Yeah.
Got it, gave it to Magdala, and they moved on. And really, there's just been incredible teamwork out here tonight, because that was a painful experience for all of us. Very
painful. And I can say, at least for Jeff and I, At least for Jeff and I, it was a very, very tough experience. I will say that for the both of us, we were in the middle of the tear gas, and so I'm going to be graphic a little bit. It was tough to experience. My eyes were burning. I couldn't see. I could not breathe. I was throwing up, and I felt like throwing up was the only way I was going to feel like I was going to gain consciousness again, almost. And I was calling for Jeff. I was like, Jeff, are you okay? And I could barely even now doing it, it's taking me back to that feeling, right? Yeah. So I was asking Jeff, I said, are you okay? I was calling for his name. Jeff, are you okay? Are you okay? I couldn't hear him. All I could hear him, just trying to get his breath. And then out of nowhere, he brings me this water bottle. And I'm like, where did he find this? Later on, we find out that he found this half water bottle somewhere in the grass. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but some of my makeup, I have runoff water. My makeup is run off now because I had to throw water on my face so I can see again. And even in the middle of all of that, I'm calling Jessica to ask, where is she? Is she okay? And she's trying to talk to me, and I'm like, I can't breathe. I can't talk right now, and you were calling me back, and I was like, Jessica, I can't talk right now.
Yeah, we were trying to keep track of each other this whole time, but we couldn't breathe. It was so difficult to breathe. It was difficult to see. Yeah. We were trying to go into the thick of it, really, just so we could find each other and keep up with each other, but that was just making it worse. It was really just kind of a terrifying experience that we were all going through. But fortunately, things seem to have calmed down for the evening now.
Folks at home,
things have calmed down.
We're getting a live report right now from our Magdala Lusat and Jessica Jewell, who have been covering these protests, if you will. I don't know. I would say last night was a riot. This was a little bit less than that, but certainly with a larger police presence there tonight. And the police seemed to be able to contain this crowd, which was certainly unruly. And then we've just been listening as you guys described your bout with the tear gas, as you were right in the middle of it. We saw the marchers walking right past the Channel 10 vehicles, and we've been streaming all of this live on our Facebook page tonight. So some viewers, it was quite a large number who were watching, according to the data from our Facebook page. So some people may be aware of this, but this is really beyond the scope of anything that I can remember of 3 decades of covering news here in the Roanoke area and in Central Virginia. So this really is without precedent in recent history, at any rate, and you guys have been right in the thick of it. So if viewers are just tuning in right now, we want to give them an idea of what they're seeing. Right now, I would say that it appears, based upon the video that we are able to get, that the crowd has dispersed, and it's been as a result of the police firing tear gas into a crowd that we were estimating in the newsroom somewhere maybe between 200 and 300 people. That's an amateur estimate. I'll put that out there. Would you guys agree with that number?
I'd say that's a fair assessment.
I'd say
it definitely grew from the initial crowd that was there when the peaceful protest started at 6 o'clock. But I'd say 200 to 300 is a fair assessment.
Yeah, and I'd say too, the crowd looked different from 6 o'clock to up until 9 when we were here. The crowd was very different. So yeah, it's safe to say that, at least, John, that number grew to that much almost.
All right, guys, and so you are still hiding behind the Salvation Army?
That's right, and we're hearing the police still go over the loudspeakers saying they want people to disperse and go home. We're still hearing some noises in the background. We're not sure
what exactly that is yet. Yeah.
So we're trying to track down what's happening.
Let's do this.
The situation is basically cleared up over here. So.
All right, let's reset. Viewers are seeing right now live pictures of the police. We've been interspersing our live pictures with some of the video from the past couple of hours. We'll let you guys get a chance to reset for a bit. We'll be checking back in with you before our newscast is over tonight. Maybe you can gather some additional information. And we do have a fairly significant accident on Interstate 581 we want to tell viewers about. But we're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be back with more of 10 News at 11 right after this. We continue to follow breaking news out of Lynchburg tonight. Protests there continue into the evening. We want to check back in with our live crews right now. And we have Jessica Jewell and Magdala Lusant, who have been right in the middle of the tear gas and a fairly large, unruly protest tonight, maybe just short of being a riot with a very heavy police presence. What have you been able to find out since last we spoke with you?
Well, John, we want to point out that things have calmed down quite a bit since we last spoke with you. You can see, behind us, you can see the police lights here. But let's have Carter, our photographer, show you this street. It's completely empty. This was filled with hundreds of people earlier this evening. In fact, within the last hour. We want to tell you, too, the last time we talked to you, as soon as we started talking to you, we had just run away from tear gas. We had run away from protesters who were harassing us.
It was stressful.
We were very stressed, and so we've gotten a second to breathe, to collect ourselves, and to try to get away from that tear gas. While we were talking to you last time, our photographer Carter got some of that tear gas in his eyes, so we're just trying to go with the flow here so we can tell you what's going on. But thankfully, it's calmed down because, Magdala, it was very chaotic earlier.
Very chaotic. I mean, this is the Salvation Army. If Carter, you want to show them, this is where we were hiding behind this building when we were speaking to you earlier, John. Remember when we said we were running away from protesters who were upset? We were hiding behind the Salvation Army to speak to you there because the tear gas was coming into the street here. And I'm not sure if you can see, but this looks like milk on the ground from people who might have been trying to rub milk into their eyes because they got the remnants of the tear gas. There's bottles left behind here too. This is where the protesters were here. As Jessica has already said, thousands or hundreds, I should say, of people that were here. We're hearing a lot more yelling right now. We're not sure what's going on down there, but you know, when people were here, we heard some sounds. We're not sure what those sounds were, but when we did hear them, we saw a line of, multiple police cars come rushing down the street here. And since then, at that time, we have seen them surround that roundabout down the street there, and they have not moved since then.